Hey everybody, welcome back into the Lettermen Lounge. This is Lettermen Live. We are at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint. This is a fun, casual conversation. We've got a lot that we can still talk about, even though it's the middle of May and the off-season for the Buckeyes. That's Berm. He just went to Texas with me last week. We had a great time.
You guys are still talking,
You went to
so that's
Texas
good to
with me.
see.
Yeah. What?
You went to Texas with me.
Oh, that's right. I was just along for the ride.
Who does the driving?
He does. And
use.
he refuses to let anybody else
Those highways in
Also
Texas,
true.
the lanes are tight. It's a bumpy experience down there.
Well, we can talk plenty about that as the show goes along. That's Nicole Cox from Roosters, who hasn't kicked us out, but the show is just starting. Justin Zwick and Bobby Carpenter. We're going to get into that tour of Texas. We're going to talk some more what's going on with recruiting, spring ball in Texas. I know Bobby will have some thoughts about the value of that. Noon kickoff times that were set for Oregon in the game, and then Fox took the Minnesota game, so we have something to work with on a schedule. We'll get into all that and some more fun, lighter stuff, but
Before we get into anything else,
okay,
we're not going to talk about.
Get off the rails quick.
let's do it.
Well, no, because thank you. There's going to be no talk about Bama and scholarship numbers because I got a Twitter.
Ooh, I saw a
It
little
was
bit
like a
of that.
tornado
Yeah.
What
that
did I
was
miss?
sucked into. When you guys were gone down there gallivanting around in Texas, I had people tell
That's
me.
actually how they call it when you get around Texas. You're gallivanting.
You're gallivanting. Tim May would say gallivanting around Texas. I digress. But, jeez. But I literally, someone watched the show who was a Bama fan.
Why do they do that?
I don't know, just because they like to be angry.
It said Bama in the
and then
YouTube headline, and then all of a sudden, people just
It really did, and they must just search through there. I'm like, why? I'm not going to watch what people say from Bama about Ohio State. I don't care. And so, we got into the scholarship numbers, and and they're like, Ohio State has 3 guys in the portal. One of them came here. I'm like, you have 6. I go, the last 3 years you've offered, last 4 years, this is a fact, 27, 27, 25, 27. That's 106. There's 85 scholarships on there.
And the NCAA says 25.
But listen, I'm just telling you, this is what happened. And I'm like, listen, Nick Saban's a great coach. I'm not going. It's inarguable. That is a fact, and he may be the greatest coach of all time. I'm conceding those points. I'm not arguing that. Like, he develops guys better. I'm like, yeah, but he also churns guys out. If he doesn't think they're good enough, he's like, no, if they don't want to compete, they leave. Or they give them the opportunity to come and build the Bama pedigree. It's amazing the arguments that were going back and forth. And like, well, they also have guys leave early. I'm like, that is a fact. I go, that also doesn't impact if they have any red shirts at all. I go, so we'll just balance that out maybe with the leaving early. And I'm like, guys go there. And I'm like, I'm not saying that it's right. And like, well, they produce guys. Look at the NFL. I'm like, all right, 20 guys. Same number of dudes in the NFL as Ohio State the last 20 years. All right, so you can say what you want. But it would just – the arguments –
Isn't it funny how the guys that are processed out of Alabama just don't want to compete? It's so
or they were thankful for the opportunity to
Only
then go there and continue their career somewhere else.
Thank you. I'll voluntarily give my scholarship to somebody else. Somebody else that can help Alabama. I can't do it anymore. I'm just out of here.
And they're like, they produce guys in the NFL. I'm like, they do. I go, but whatever we can get the definition of intercollegiate athletics and what that's supposed to mean, and I understand the professionalization of it, and I'm driving that bus as much as anyone else, but there still is like an element of like just pretending that you actually care about players when they get there. And like that they're just not literally commodities that you're going to change in and change out. And I'm not saying it's the case for everybody, and I'm not saying that Saban does that. And then the next response is look at the titles. I go, I already conceded that at the beginning that he was probably the greatest college football coach of all time. So can we at least we've made a flat circle right there on the time continuum, and that literally burned up about half of my Thursday and Friday.
Well, everybody has something to do.
I agree, Bob.
That's what I like about the start of Letterman Live is now going to become the start of the show where from last week, Bob, it's like get caught up. Last week on Letterman Live, Bob was trumped by Nicole Cox on the injury front. This week, an Alabama fan got into it with Bobby Carpenter.
No, not an Alabama fan.
Alabama.
I was like
the state of Alabama.
Half of Alabama. And I may have said in one of my retorts, what did they say? Something about competing in there, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I live in a state where you don't put gas in trash bags or something like that. And then I live in an area like that. I mean, then it was like you're besmirching the whole state. It was just it went off the rails, dude. It was.
That's why you can't get in the comments.
Oh, listen, I was here for it. And listen, I'm going to try to stay positive. I stay above board. I'm not going to get vitriol. The dude kept calling me a draft bust and all this stuff. I'm like, I played 7 years in the league. It's fine. You can have your opinions on whatever. It's okay. You're completely entitled to them.
Did you show him that your bank statement?
That's like because that's not none of those things are relevant. I'm like, you can find any pertinent.
Well, it is if he's calling you a
because if
draft
Nick
bust.
Saban was your coach, James Laurinaitis would have started over here freshman year. And I'm like, maybe he would have. I don't know. You'd have to ask James about that. It was that is where
These people are crazy, man. You can't get into it with them.
A lot of information coming there. Like, maybe
Did you remind him some of the coaches that you played for?
it doesn't matter.
They don't care about
It
that.
doesn't matter. You're going to find the facts if it's your argument.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I conceded like 3 or 4 things that I would believe are fairly factual statements. That doesn't mean that excludes other things from also being true.
Nicole, so obviously we're going to need to.
It was not a fun casual conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't
the last
sound.
week on Letterman Live segment with Bobby to kick it off. I mean, this is the new thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Last week it was great. It was a great day. Just I'm still living on
She's
that.
still winning. She's still living on that win.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, go find some
I
more.
think 2 losses.
That's
It's a rough week for
That's
you.
a tough week. Appetizer Tuesday, Nicole. We're going to get away from.
Easy bacon fries.
Ooh.
I know. Those are a good one.
They're like
Bacon.
So good.
They're like the chips cousin, Justin.
Yeah.
They kind
So
of are.
they're not all the way
I'm
there.
Man,
working
I
on it.
like where
I'm
you're going with
working
it, but
on
I
the
just
chips.
can't. They're
Yeah.
good. I mean, cheesy
Potato
bacon
skins-
fries. You're never
potato
going to.
skins. That's like another cousin where the branches connected and like remerged into another.
I like
family.
them all.
Yeah, potato skins are just super thick potato chips.
Yes.
They are.
They are.
They're just
Yes.
not
Very
the same.
potato-y.
Earthier the better.
It's all about perspective.
That's why we need the chip, just because everything's very potato.
This has cheese and bacon on it. Cheese and bacon. Just give me the chip.
Yep.
Fried deliciousness
working
with
on
some
it,
ranch.
Justin. I'm working
to
on
dip
it.
in.
So if you guys
Thank you.
love smooth segues, this is the one that's.
Justin, we're going to need you to get over the chips.
Oh, sorry.
And we're going to need to talk about Ohio State football.
Berm, that's not your notebook, by the way. It's not one that we pass around. That's Nicole's notebook.
I know. Hey, you guys, there's a lot of
Some
great
good nuggets
things
in here.
Yeah, there's wisdom in
things.
those in
Yes.
their sheets.
Okay. Smooth segue number 2. When you look at, we're going to get this out of the way right now. It was a strange story, bizarre story. I think for the most part, Ohio State is already able to move on past the massage therapist situation on Thursday. The only real question I had about it, and I asked Gene Smith this, and I've come around. I'll get you guys' thoughts on it. We're not going to dwell on this too long because there's no criminal charges, there's no suspensions, there's no NCAA violations. So it's not much. So it's not much of a story.
Give it to the NCAA then.
Yeah.
So that was my question to Gene Smith. Like, if there could
You're
be
a
some
professional.
embarrassing details for the players, are they comfortable with putting this out? Said Ohio State's perspective was that was their only real concern about releasing the report and forwarding it on to the prosecutor, the woman who lost her license. It was going to be pretty easy at some point to find out what happened. And so Berm and I were driving through Texas trying to make sure we could get in position to talk to Gene Smith, read the report,
Get into
file the story.
triangulating the
Well, because we
sidelines.
couldn't, it took Ohio State kept this extremely.
It was
quiet.
good. They should have.
And they
That's
sh-
how it should have
and
operated.
They should have.
Operate.
So, we're trying to think. Well, why are they treating this as if it's some sort of major deal? Like, because I was told there were no coaches involved, no players that were leaving, there was no NCAA violations beforehand. And
No
well,
punishments of any kind.
Well, then why am I having a background conversation with the athletic director
for the first time ever.
Yeah, for my first time in 10 years. And I thought that it was strange, and I didn't think that the players should have to go through with that publicly. But the flip side is, and as I sit here right now, I think that Ohio State handled it in as well of a situation as they possibly could. Because if somebody in a year or two found this out, the way that this story would have been presented and covered is, well, there must have been something wrong here. These players must have been getting an impermissible benefit. This must have been some coordinated scheme. And then Ohio State would have to respond to that and say, well, here's an investigation. And then in hindsight, it would be like they were trying to cover it up or justify the conclusion that they made, which was that there were no criminal charges, that there was no money, no NCAA violations, no impermissible benefits, nothing worth kicking anybody off the team. So I think that the way that the transparency they showed wound up being the right choice for them, even if I still find it very weird. And if you look at the way normally you have a sex quote-unquote scandal in Ohio State and the national media would explode. There'd be so much excitement to get it, and you don't see any of that because they just put it out here and like, all right, well, the NCAA and the police aren't involved. We can move on here.
It's great because I wish that's how all of these call them off the field incidents would be able to be handled. We got people like you and Berm who dig in and want to try to sensationalize all these stories.
That's me.
Always.
But seriously, when you talk about, especially whether it's sexual assaults or all of these things, only when they get in the media and they begin to become adjudicated publicly is that when it gets ridiculous. Like, you should be able to conduct an investigation with the parties involved without any outside scrutiny. Third party does it. Boom, here it is. Here's the facts. We hand it over to the police. Tell me what you think. The prosecutor. Boom, here it is. Oh, the massage board of the state of Ohio or whoever the governs that. And then, okay, this is what happened. Oh, well, maybe she was right, wrong. Okay, we think she's wrong. Let's take away whatever it was. And I thought it was done really well. I'm impressed that Ohio State was able to keep it quiet as long as it did. They handed out a full thing. There was nothing else to see. I mean, literally, it was from soup to nuts, man. Everything you could possibly want in your meal. So there was nothing else really in there to dig in on. And so I think they did a great job. I don't know why they gave it to the NCAA. I'll never understand. They got enough things going over there. Mark Emerson is coloring book right now trying to figure out that NIL thing of how that's going to break down.
You connect the dots, I thought it was.
And because, Bob, you don't know, they might say, all right, well, this is Ohio State, and we're going to make an example out of this. Like, you don't know how they're going to respond to it. Even if it's because they're going to – you don't know what they're going to interpret as a violation because LSU is funneling money through a hospital in charity and giving it to players, but that's okay. But
through a charity.
But you have tattoos, and it's let's give this program the death penalty.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. Like, this is
it's crazy.
You got the tattoos. You've got MassageGate. I mean, you got some great stuff going on here. Some nice above board stuff, Austin.
Anyway, I think that they didn't ever want this to come to a situation, as you said, where publicly the NCAA then had to ask whether something was wrong. I think if you volunteer it, you're probably
because that's worked real well in the past.
You're right.
You look at the two paths you could take now with NCAA, helping them only like they pull you in. And it's the friend that like, hey, you're trying to help. They pull you over the top into the water. Let me get you out of the pool. Yeah. Oh, over the top. My cell phone was in my pocket. You jerk. Come on.
All right. I wanted to give you an easy win just to get your confidence back up. I'll concede that point. Nicole, the other part of this, you and I were talking about it. It's like, it's not a big deal when there's not criminal charges, but for Ohio State to get to that point, they needed 117 players and coaches to consent to discuss this with investigators, and it couldn't have been fun. But it's probably another good example of the strength of the leadership of this program that they trusted them to do that, to get to this conclusion. 2 months, nobody talked about it publicly. Ryan Day and Gene Smith coordinated all this to make sure in the law firm that they could get through it. So that part of it is probably, if you want to look at it that way, a positive for Ohio State.
Well, and I think, too, it's with this type of a subject, I feel for the football program that they have to think about so many different elements about the media, protecting the guys. I mean, we think parenting's complicated. Like, imagine doing it for that entire team along with university involved, NCAA. I mean, there are just so many moving parts. And I think I do believe in that if you don't have anything to hide, show your cards. Because I think the media, like you were saying earlier, the media looks for something to be hidden. And they're going to dig deeper into it and look for more information than that is actually there. So if you're just like, hey, here's everything, they're kind of stand back like, okay, well, I guess we can't make anything out of this. And I think that's the reason Ohio State gave it to NCAA as well, that they're saying, hey, this is what happened, and we just want to make you aware of it because nothing worse than them finding out from someone else other than the program.
And if I can tie this back to Alabama for a second, what Bobby's talking about.
Let's make sure that we do that for our loyal watchers down in Tuscaloosa.
What Bob was talking about earlier is about how these players are turned into commodities. And so the reason ultimately why Ohio State goes out and presents this publicly and says it, hey, they're trying to show people that they care about these kids as real people. And maybe there's a lot of people who joke about this stuff, college athletes getting laid. That's not what it's about. I mean, it's about protecting kids and protecting the kids in the program from people who have, malicious intent. And so it is about Ryan Day and Gene Smith and those guys saying, hey, we're going to take care of our guys here, and we're going to make sure that when parents give their kids to Ohio State, they know that they're trying to actually help them in bigger ways.
Wow, football players are getting laid. I did not.
Heck of a recruiting pitch. Come get your massage.
Glad that we could get an investigation into
that. Be the most relaxed team in the country.
JC,
it's just a weird situation. I understand something happened where they had to go through and do the investigation, but once they have all the information that they could have and realize this really isn't anything, I would have probably kept it internal until the NCAA comes knocking, and then you say, here's everything we did. You guys want to look into it, fine, but you're not going to find anything that we didn't already.
Right.
We knew there was nothing there. That's why we didn't have a big press conference, scare half of Ohio State's fan base because everybody thought, oh, man, tomorrow there's something coming out. What's it going to be? And then it was just kind of this report. So great, they're taking care of the kids. These kids have chances to get into all kinds of trouble with people like that who are always looking for something or have some kind of bad intentions at play. And, they're looking out for them. That's great. Got this taken care of. And, I think now we just move on and put it kind of behind us.
Yeah, I think that moving on part was also really appealing to Ohio State because otherwise, as Bob was saying earlier on, if people are going to dig into it and then try to turn that into a different narrative down the road, then Ryan Day and Gene Smith or every player that was involved has to go to bed every night thinking, is tomorrow the day that somebody tips them off that this massage therapist lost her license by working with Ohio State players? That's done with.
Yeah.
You get to move on. You get to focus on games, which are going to kick off on a Thursday night in primetime at Minnesota. The home opener in the Horseshoe is going to be at noon. Also, when we talked to Gene Smith last week, he is expecting that there will be a 100% capacity in the Horseshoe for that game.
All right.
Everything about to be wide open again here.
Let's go, baby.
Starting on June 2nd. So that was a nice little nugget tossed in there as well. And then the game, of course, will be at noon. That will also be on Fox. So the first reaction that we got was, man, noon games suck.
The worst.
I don't get it. I love noon games. Also,
you've got to write an article afterwards.
All right, but here's
that's what
you guys will have a
selfish.
turn here. You're going to have a turn. Ohio State doesn't lose games at noon. They are almost
because they play bad teams at noon.
They also play
in the history of noon games
at noon because
in the
that's
last
when
3
Fox
years
has decided
they
to
just started.
But those are bad teams they're playing at noon, even though it's a big game.
Wisconsin and Penn State were pretty good. Anyway, I understand the complaint of fans that you don't get the time to tailgate. I've been in that situation for other sports. I get it. I'd like to have all day for that too. But the team wins games. The broadcast ratings are through the roof for Fox. The only other issue that they have is that recruits can't get there. Bert can talk about
that's a fairly big issue.
But
it's a major issue.
It's a complication, but that's also addressed on the back end by the television ratings and the potential that they could have on Saturday night with the coaching staff that doesn't exist if they're in the stadium. And people, I will just say, the complaints about the atmosphere that Berm has made them for as long as I've covered this team, I don't buy that as well because I've seen other games and, Penn State in the afternoon against Akron. Guess what? It's not rocking like a whiteout for that. What's most important is the opponent on the field. At noon on September 11th, with 100,000 people there for a top 10 showdown, that place is going to be as electric as any place in the country, and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I don't think it would make a difference to me if it was at 8 o'clock.
I think it'd be more electric.
How? Because drunker and wouldn't be more electric.
Yes. Have you listen?
Bob, we would be the same amount of sober. So
you two, yeah.
But have you ever seen the pyramid of decision making?
Yeah.
And alcohol consumption? How your decision making, it's an inverse relationship, okay? So as this goes up, decision making goes down, and these things.
I only know that anecdotally. I haven't actually seen
for sure. All of us up here.
That perfect intersection is about 8 o'clock.
Okay.
To where you're right where you need to be, and you're really aggressive, but you're not going to make any really bad decisions. We're way too far over here. At like 1 o'clock, that's when those things get real far apart, and then we're going to do some bad stuff. And so I like the 8 o'clock start. You could have at least given me a 3:30. I really honestly feel bad for the Oregon guys. Like, hey, here you go. Fly across the country. Kick off at 9 a.m. Oh, your parents going to get out of bed and try to wake up and watch that drinking their coffee? Like, you're playing a premier game. And Ohio State recruits a lot of guys from the West Coast. So this also impacts the West Coast recruiting because who the heck is watching that thing? Like, the two premier brands you could argue right now under Fox's umbrella, outside of Oklahoma with the Big 12, are Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon has been dominating the Pac-12 for the most part. Ohio State's handling the Big 10. Yeah. Like, why would you not make it at 3:30? And I know they've got the big noon kick thing, and that's all well and good, and that's their deal. As a player, I liked playing in the night games unless it was a game that should be played at noon. You know what I really dislike is when you try to tell me it's a good game by putting Rutgers on at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, it's a night game.
Oh, yeah, you get to the end of the night, you're like, what do I got to watch? Rutgers and Indiana?
8:30, it's 8:30, it's 28-0. Now what am I going to try to find?
Mm-hmm. The fact is, whenever you put Ohio State on, you're going to have those same numbers. If it's at 8 o'clock, I like the – what is it, 7:30 game that they have? That's the best because then you're in bed by 11:30. You're not, having to stay up. I mean, maybe you guys. Plus, myself, I'm up the stairs. I'm up the stairs in my bed, earlier on those nights. But people will watch these games whenever. The noon game to me,
You can't get Roosters for tailgating at 9 o'clock.
Of course you can. Can't you, Nicole?
Or for some big games, so restaurant opens at 11, but like we've opened before for Ohio State-Michigan game, we've opened early.
Well, what about for Oregon?
Well, now
you know what? We're going to discuss that tomorrow.
Now she's taking that to the team.
I do have a question. I have a question, for Bobby and Justin on, so when you have a noon game, is it easier on the players? Because I know, I don't like to fly. Okay. So when I have an early morning...
you're a nervous wreck most of the time, Nicole. So
I'm a little worried. Yeah. So
because she's thinking about Jay-Z attacking her about chips.
No, but
She brought it up.
when I'd rather take an early morning flight so that I don't have to think about it all day. So... Do you guys like a noon kickoff? Because then it's like you're waking up, or, a night game, you have all day to overanalyze the game and start just playing mind games.
Those are real questions.
I know.
To me, there's two good parts about a noon game. One, it's what she's talking about. You wake up, you have your breakfast, you get going, you play the game. There's no waiting around, watching other games, wasting time, because a night game gets boring. You're in the hotel, you can't really do anything.
There's nothing you
can only take so many team walks. You walk around the hotel.
Mandated nap.
Yeah, basically.
I like those.
Right? So that's a good thing about the noon game. Another thing about the noon game is you're out of there at 4:30.
Yeah, then you get the time.
Yeah, so that's you time.
Yeah.
You get to go home. Your family's probably there because they came to the game.
Yeah.
You go to dinner. You get some time away from football. So that is a nice thing about the noon game. That's the only two I can think of.
Yeah, he hit them both on the head.
Both on the head.
what I was saying about
so the 3:30 game is probably one of the
Another
best.
win for Nicole.
Yep.
Because
I'm really liking this. I think we're going to start keeping track.
3:30 is that middle window.
We need a little tally mark. In the notebook.
We have a sign right here. Actually, you can put a notch next to Bobby or a notch next to Jay-Z.
Yep.
I like it.
But the one thing, with the noon, it's just you get up early. You're waking up early, 6:30. The 3:30, it's that nice window where you
sleep
get
in a little bit. Yep.
The night game, you do sit around. And when you're young, I think you don't handle your emotions quite as well. When I got older, man, I would wake up, eat early, we'd have our meeting, go down, do what we need to do. I'd come back, take a nap, watch a little college football. You just have to keep your emotions in check all day. It's not the worst. And then I'd sit there at the Blackwell and stare out at all those people.
Everybody would be outside throwing footballs.
Thinking, I know
drinking beer.
they're going to be here for me when that ball. When the foot hits the ball, they're gonna swing as hard as they can, Austin. For Buckeye Nation, go make the great state of Ohio proud and win this darn football game.
Well, I did like when I covered the SEC and the marquee game for that league at that time. 3:30 kickoff. You knew that's when it was going to be. Tennessee didn't play in a whole lot of them when I was there, so I wound up covering a lot of night kickoffs for that team because that's where they shuffled them off into Rutgers land. But that's about the perfect time for me for football. You have plenty of time to be there and tailgate. You can get out at a reasonable time after it's over. Jay-Z can go to bed or whatever he needs to do. Well, I liked 3:30, but the reason that this exists for the Big Ten and the reason that it's not going to change is because the SEC carved out that window. The other leagues carved out a primetime broadcast. So Fox found a way to solve their problem. You don't have to compete head-to-head, and you have a marquee brand that's going to give you massive ratings for advertisers in the noon to 3 window. So Ohio State's going to keep
why
playing.
the West Coast, though? Then why would you sign the Pac-12?
Well,
because you can't.
Somebody had to. You got a nice little discount.
Well, then you get the 10:30 p.m. slot, Bob.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's Pac-12 after dark.
And that's when I'm sitting there after the noon games, and
that's when the bad decisions happen. I've watching the Pac-12.
I've been consuming alcohol for 14 hours. And it's 10:30, and I'm sitting there watching this game okay, I'm fading in and out of consciousness and because it's tough to drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
You have to start.
But it's tough to drink all day if you also pass out at 5, which is the problem with the noon game because it's still light outside. So your watch might be ended, but the day is not over.
Berm and I just wind up watching Pac-12 after dark because that's when we finally get to start drinking.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's when I get home. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that the Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12 should just listen to us about everything.
Yeah.
And schedule every game at 3:30.
Just all at once?
I'll tell you this, though. For the players, and Bob, you might agree with me on this, and it goes to what he's saying. There's nothing better than going into the shoe under the lights. I mean, it's a long wait for that, but boy, I'll tell you what, that's a different game. And when you come to Ohio State, you're used to playing Friday Night Lights, right? That's what you work towards all week in high school. Then you come and it's like, we got a game at noon on Saturday. This is weird.
Then they tell you,
what
are we, St. Ignatius?
Well, yeah. And then it's like, you're gonna have a night game. That's a different vibe in the shoe. I mean, it is I think having recruits at a game like that in the shoe at night is better than coaches being able to go.
It makes a
Absolutely.
huge
do something
difference.
else.
Especially now because there's so many official visits and visits that happen in the summer. These kids are coming back in the fall for games. They're coming back for that game atmosphere. So, previously, years gone by, that was your official visit. That might be your only trip to town. And so you want that one-on-one time with the coaches. But now, you need to be able to walk in and feel what that place is like when it's
lights
lit up.
We played, I think, 2 night games in my career at Ohio State. We played Washington to open the season in 2003, and we played Texas to open the home season. Yeah, and they were special. They meant something. I'm not saying play all the games. I'm telling you though,
it's special.
You get some big time games, man. Slide them in the.
Yeah, I agree. That Oregon-Ohio State game, both those uniforms under the lights, that would have looked
But
nice.
that was the other unintended consequence, or there were 2 of them. When Urban Meyer really wanted more night games, Ohio State wanted to play more night games. Well, what wound up happening is that, that also means you're going to play Illinois at night because that's what you asked for. All right, well, that atmosphere for the night game when you're playing Illinois-Rutgers is not the same. It's the same as if it's at noon. I think it's all about the opponent. The other part of that is you want to play night games. Well, guess what? Iowa wants to play you at night. Purdue wants to play you at
home night games.
Okay, but you have to do it on the other end. And
Not
so
really.
Ohio
No one
State,
cares.
Ohio State could say we're
Ohio
not
State
going.
wound up playing every road game at night.
I know.
And so you're giving that advantage to the opponent.
Well, that comes up to the people who are in charge here. I'm not going to mention any names and just say no.
Well, you can't say no.
Yeah, you can.
Not in September and October. You can't.
When you're Ohio State, you can do whatever. Hey, in my
You can
club,
do whatever.
I can splash the
Then why
pot
don't we have
this
whatever
league?
the bleep I like.
Okay.
Who are they tuning in to watch?
Yes.
Well, whether they could or should or will do that those are completely different
I
questions.
would like if someone went full Dirk Diggler. I'm the biggest freaking star here.
Oh boy.
That's Ohio State.
Well, don't you think that they would have been playing football
Ohio
in
State
September
is
last year if that was the case?
Ohio State likes to play nice with the league and with the TV
Why?
people because that's what they do. I don't know. You tell
I'm tired
me. You
of
know these
pulling
answers.
That's the world we're in now. You got to play nice.
Bobby's asking questions that he knows the answers to. That means it's time to take a break. We're going to let Nicole get out of here. She's going to make sure that she gets the restaurant open early on September 11th. Who knows what the Appetizer Tuesday will be that week? But
Exactly. And it's September 11th, by the way. What a better way than to get the nighttime flyover there.
Gosh.
I mean, do I have to draw this up any better for people? Nighttime
Picturing it right now. It's just beautiful thing.
Huge American flag out there on
Big
the
American
It'll
flag.
Be amazing.
Oh, yeah. Length of the field.
I think we
It's
can still
going
get
to be
changed.
so
It's not-
special. It will.
do it. Let's
And
get
it's
Gene
probably
on
better
next
if
week.
it's not at night because then people will actually be sober enough to to
Appreciate
see
it.
it,
We don't-
appreciate it.
Yeah, they'll
Nicole.
The
actually
players don't
appreciate
care
the
if
game,
they
Bob.
remember or appreciate the game. They want them screaming as loud as they can, jumping up and down.
Remember who
And
you
those
are.
night games.
Nicole, don't give up your point.
Listen, I think everyone's right. Okay.
Thank you.
You guys are
Berm,
right.
that's my job.
You guys are right. Night games are better. Austin's right. If Ohio State's playing Penn State or Michigan or Oregon at noon, it's going to be louder than it would be if they were playing somebody else at night.
Well, that's what I find most ludicrous about the suggestion that Ohio State can't play big games at noon. And then you ask, well, can you move the Michigan game tonight? No!
Yeah, and then people get all right.
I think it could. I think that'd be awesome.
It's sacred.
I know. It is weird it's at noon.
I mean, my senior year, we had the 3:30 Michigan game. That was awesome.
We can move.
Second half,
we can
like-
move the game.
We already know that
if we're
3:30.
doing it earlier in the year. You can't do it at night at December 1st at 8 o'clock. No, thank you.
that is-
I have to be on the field.
That'd be great. I think we should
be on the field.
I'm not signing off on that.
Okay. All right, we're going to sign off on some other things. We're going to be right back on Lettermen Live. It's brought to you by Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint.
Roosters is one of the unique companies that we deal with. They're involved in everything we do, from our personal foundation to also the Cancer Research Fund. And that's from the Buckeye Cruise from Cancer to all the events leading up to the Buckeye Cruise.
They donate back to different organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long, long time.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
All right, welcome back into the Letterman Lounge. Berm, we learned a lot last week in Texas. We started, and the fact that they were actually having a spring practice, I didn't really know what I was getting into on that regard, because we do a lot of these trips, and you might see 7-on-7 or a walkthrough and just meeting the family primarily. But we saw real live hitting, real football, and it was the first time I can't wait to get Bobby's thoughts on this because he actually really knows what goes on with high school football, high school sports in this state and the logic they have. But tell me first your number one takeaway from the week, and then we're going to get into the value of these spring practices for high school football.
I just think it's about how many players are there. I mean, it's the same way when I was down in Atlanta in April. You can literally go any direction 3 miles and find Division I players, and it's just there is such a what should be an unfair advantage for Texas and A&M and these other schools, and the fact that Ohio State continues to go to these places and pull these kids out of there. I don't want to say with ease, but the fact that they're able to do so speaks just absolute volumes about what the brand of this place is and of the Ohio State football program, because there's 58 different Division I colleges in Texas or something like that. I mean, they can go anywhere, and they want to come to Columbus, Ohio. 58 might be an exaggeration.
Well, there's 130 teams in all of Division I football.
Yeah, I think 58 of them are in
probably
Texas.
too.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
I honestly,
Including the hyper.
for the record on this, I think Ohio might have more Division I colleges than Texas does.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm just saying.
Major Division I
You just
school.
threw it out there. Oh wait, who are you going to consider? Texas Tech,
well, sure.
SMU, Baylor.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
We know what happened with Baylor now. Baylor athletics, they're barely above board. Now we'll get the Baylor people off.
They've never even seen the board.
Well,
Welcome, Baylor fans, to
yes.
Let's expand.
Thanks for stopping by today.
We're going to expand the tent. Hey, Baylor, you're in the headline this
Come
week.
on down.
Come on down and tell us your thoughts about how
You guys
above
are terrible.
board you're not cheating at all.
they want to win. Let's just put it like that.
Hey,
Well, you have to want to, first of all. Then you have to decide.
you got to actually do it. Yeah. How?
The point is, there's a lot of good players in Texas, and I think that when you look at that state, Ohio State going down there and becoming such just a regular topic of conversation, it speaks to what Urban Meyer really did in that state.
Okay, you two grew up playing Ohio high school football. We know what the restrictions are for that compared to some other states. I had never really thought of it. Even though I've heard Urban Meyer talk about it, Ryan Day talk about it, lots of people discuss the value that you can get out of, getting a Texas kid who's gone through spring practice. I didn't really ever consider it as a negative for Ohio or a major positive for Texas. It was just something that existed. And then I saw South Lake Carroll going live for an hour and 2.5 hours of installation and individual drills and going practice, and Quinn Ewers throwing the football around. I thought, oh, well, he gets to do this 60 times throughout his high school career.
It's another season.
And Ohio, kids in this state get 0. And then I was like, okay, I get it now. This is a different playing field compared to the kids in this state.
So you look at it, you essentially get 2 weeks, and this is how it's set up. And honestly, I'm waiting for someone. They're really teetering right now, the OHSAA. This would be a great knockout blow. And it's something that I've thrown around for the last 20 years, because my dad, when he played in Houston, he lived down there in Texas. Went down there, he's like, holy smokes. I mean, they've been doing this down there since the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And, how does it run? Because people are like, oh, you got baseball, you have track, you can't intercede on these sports. Like, well, if AAU basketball and all this crap, go on, they have fall ball and baseball for kids that are playing. Talking about they do a 2-week deal, practice, have a little scrimmage at the end. I don't know if they're able to play another school or how exactly that works. I mean, they're winter. I mean, they're allowed to have a football in the winter, and they have class, and guys get there before school, and their gym class is running routes and practicing, they have indoor facilities and all this stuff. And so yeah, you're getting a more polished kid. And so I'm waiting for someone, and I hope that it happens eventually, to file a lawsuit against the OHSAA about hindering their ability to develop relative to other states and putting them at a competitive disadvantage for their development on a national level to be able to garner a college scholarship. Because that's really what it is. Football is people talk about in Ohio how they love it, but they treat it like the stepchild when it comes to sports, with the ability of what you're able to do in the summer with camp days and how they've ratcheted everything back. It's the only sport here that really doesn't have 2 seasons and at the high school level. And so it's ridiculous, because you see those kids down there, they get that extra 2 weeks, and over the course of 4 years, it's almost a whole another season that they get to develop and practice. So I'm not telling kids to not play other sports and do the stuff, but it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're still playing other sports in Texas.
Well, it's 2 weeks.
You can do it. I mean, and the simple point is, you have even 7-on-7 stuff that's not allowed in Ohio either. So it's not
10
even
days in the summer.
Right. So it's just.
Y'all went to the wrong schools. You're saying gym class, indoors, track coaches were football coaches.
They had a full spring game coming up at South Lake Carroll. There were
Every high school
20,000 people there to watch it. So you got that.
Dragons.
Well, I did not. There was a lot of things I learned. Like,
how was the flow of our guy down there?
It's ugly.
It looks ugly. I didn't know if it looked better in person or not.
No, it doesn't.
No.
But the dude is a ridiculous talent. Berm sees a lot more of them than I do, but this kid was doing things that
Berm loves watching dudes. Them and Schlegs together.
I love watching them throw the football around. That's what I'm into, Bob.
Don't ask questions about it. I mean, can you imagine, Jay-Z, that value?
No. I mean, my parents moved to Florida. My dad was a principal down there at one of the schools, and I remember being down there visiting one time during spring. It's like I went and threw to the football team. They're having practice, and they're like, "Hey, the coach was like, will you come in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is amazing."
Will you transfer here?
Yeah, birth certificate ready for you.
Yeah, I mean they're fully padded. I mean it was something special, and you just wonder why Ohio, with the football crazy state that we are, that's not something that's ever really been tried before or brought up. I don't know if they've.
Oh, it's been brought up.
Well, sure. I guess it's been brought up, but quickly shot down, and they don't have any need for it or want for it. And it's just like it doesn't make sense to me because football is football in Ohio. I mean, it's the biggest sport that we have going here. So to give these kids an opportunity to practice a couple more weeks during the spring, work on what they need to work on, just like spring ball at Ohio State. You go through practice. You get done, you know what you have to work on going into summertime, and then get ready for camp. But you have that ability to, have something in the spring because nothing is like football. That's why they don't have AAU teams. You can't just throw a team together and go play. Nothing is like it. So to be, to give them that opportunity for a couple weeks in the spring to be with their team and to be going through the drills that their coaches want them to be going through, I think it would be huge. And it's just dumb that Ohio really hasn't done
it. And Ohio is not different from Texas in the way that they value high school football. I'd say it's top 5, top 10 when it comes to the Friday night lights experience and all that. I mean, Ohio still loves football. They still produce a ton of talented people. But if you're just putting them out there on the table for a recruiter and you measure them about even athletically, and this kid has 60 more practices of football under his belt, like you have to take this choice.
You're getting better. You get better. And that's why Ohio State, you've seen them gravitate to get more kids from Texas as opposed to Florida, which Florida has spring ball too. But in Texas, I mean, they have coaches that are just coaches, that's all they do. You're not a teacher.
Yeah, they're not teaching social studies.
No, they're not doing anything. And so you get a kid that's usually a great athlete that's well-trained, but also has a pretty high football IQ because they've gone through all of these things throughout the time. And so they're pretty good kids, and the coaches are tough on them. It's not like Florida where it's like the AAU passing circuit, and you got all these dudes coaching who knows what they're really in it for.
Oh, yeah.
These guys know what they're really in it for.
We do know that, but we can pretend like we don't. But in Texas, I mean, these coaches, they make good money. They don't want to lose their jobs. They want to produce high level. So they're going to challenge these kids. They're going to develop them. They'll be fundamentally sound. They'll understand the game. And so you get a really high quality player coming out of there.
The demographics of just people where they live is shifting in a major way. So people are already leaving the Midwest to go to Texas, to go to Florida. And all of these little things that pop up that are just slowing the development of the kids here is why Ohio State fans, 4 years from now, why didn't Ohio State offer this kid? Well, because he was not a better football player 3 years ago because this dude had 4 extra years of learning the game. I mean, and so it just changes and forces Ohio State to kind of, look elsewhere. They have to look around. So people who are clamoring for more Ohio kids on the Buckeyes roster, do you want the Buckeyes to win more football games or do you want more Ohio kids? Because the Ohio kids are developing.
Yes, both.
The Ohio kids are developing as 21, 22-year-old men because they finally got a chance to catch up.
More growers than showers.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think that's the part. I remember you getting that question a lot 3 or 4 years ago, Berm, about if you needed kids who understood the rivalry better, would they have more passion if you got the Ohio kids? Would they stay longer? Well, I mean, they have to stay longer, but you don't want to sign up for that development process if you're trying to win right away. You want someone like J.K. Dobbins who rolls in out of Texas and starts for you in the opener. You want Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, that's Jeff Okuda. They're coming ready to play. That's why you're not seeing that with Ohio kids. They're not going to go start as a true freshman.
All right, the very rare of the rare in Ohio. I mean, the Jack Sawyers of the world are not. They're in Texas. There's 10 of those every year.
Yeah.
In Ohio, there's one every other year, and that's a major difference.
All right. What else is on your mind, Berm? Because it's time to go off.
Back. This is 3 for 3, right?
I don't have a lot on my mind right now. I feel like it's just good to be around people, you know.
He made it through his flight last week. You know, that was big.
You know,
I had to twist his arm to get on an earlier flight back on Friday. He sits down.
I don't like layovers. I think layovers are stupid.
Said, Jay-Z, we can get on this flight and we'll be home 4 hours early.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Normally, he's like,
I did it.
There was actually 2 left at the same time. One was going to go to Dallas, and it was going to get us back to Columbus about an hour earlier.
Where were you flying out of at that point?
We were in Houston. I said, we can go to Dallas. We can actually be home at 6 o'clock. And he's, no, that's going the wrong way. So he volunteered.
Going the wrong way.
I got him to finally admit that we needed to leave earlier or could leave earlier. And he wanted the one Houston to Nashville instead of Dallas because it was going the proper direction. But that one was actually 1 hour long.
They don't have a plane there for you. You need to drive back.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
That's logical.
I don't feel like it makes sense. Listen, I'm a person who believes in progress, guys. Okay. You can't live looking backwards. You can't travel forward traveling backwards.
Well, you still had to go north. Like what did it matter? If
No, I would have to go totally west.
No, you need to look at a map.
I don't like maps and stuff.
But yet you drive.
Yeah, because then I'm in charge.
He loved it.
I don't know how you guys made it through.
I don't know if you guys know this about Austin J. Ward, but he does not often, surrender control. And so when I have the ability to be the person in charge of the car, I'm going to take it every darn time.
I didn't know you were such a control freak.
I wanted to drive to Texas, but he was like, no.
Well, that sounds terrible.
Imagine all the places we could have seen.
The worst idea.
Imagine all the places.
Do you have a month to just take off and go drive down there?
I've never seen
some Dr. Seuss into this.
We could have seen America's Splendor.
The places you'll go.
We could have seen America's Splendor.
Let me tell you this.
I guess.
Instead, we were
then you'd have hit
stuffed onto
Texas
a plane
border and had another day.
Austin will
Stuffed
write
into planes
he'll
like
write a report on what exists between Nashville and Memphis on I-40.
I've had to make that drive enough times.
And then what exists between Memphis and Little Rock, and then Little Rock and Texarkana.
Sounds awesome.
If I never have to drive between
that.
Nashville and Memphis again, I will be happy.
We could have seen America's
I've made that
Splendor.
drive.
That's all I'm saying. America's Splendor.
I caught it from 35,000 feet. It looked
nice, right?
We were sandwiched between a million people on these planes. I don't know. I mean, Southwest. Let's go back to no middle seats. Okay? Come on. That is the one social distancing measure that I am 100% in favor of.
You know what I like? Sitting down at concerts now. I'm old enough. Like reserved tables. Hey, that was great. Socially distant concerts. Sign me up for that. And no middle seats on the plane. Deal. I'm ready for it. Let's adapt and evolve, people.
Oh, I mean, why don't you start spreading COVID around?
Yeah, I don't know why we need to stand up at concerts.
Be a super spreader, a vector, if you will.
You got to party. That's why you got to have games at 8 o'clock. Because you got the people at noon who want to sit in the stands. 8 o'clock, you got people who want to get up and go.
That might be the next thing. Just taking the seats out entirely.
Yes.
Just have a numbered space. You're coming here, you're coming to party.
That's right.
I don't want that. I don't. That's not the solution.
And in the press box.
In the press box only. No chairs in the press box.
I would actually like a lot of people removed from the press box, but that's another conversation entirely. We're not even going to get
next week. Austin names names.
Yeah. Who would he like to see kicked out?
Previously on Lettermen Live. Thanks everybody for joining us again. Nicole Cox for having us in here in the Lettermen Lounge. That's Berm, Jay-Z, and Bobby Carpenter. I am Austin Ward. We'll be right back here next Monday. Come hang out. Otherwise, watch us on YouTube or find all of our coverage at lettermenrow.com. See ya.